That's where this offense is very different from a year ago.
Ooh, I got to mute. Got Kentucky, Georgia on. Let some people get in here.
That's where this offense is very different from a year ago.
Ooh, I got to mute. Make sure the audio is good.
Got Kentucky, Georgia on. Let some people get
All righty. Welcome to Alabama Postgame. Good heavens, phone. Oh, why are you still playing muted? Oh, we're off to a disaster after a couple weeks off, aren't we? Wedding, and then last week, my computer just, I have no better way of putting it. It crapped out on me. My camera wasn't working. I couldn't type. My keyboard, it was just, Anyway, Alabama gets the win, 26-20 over Texas A&M. You are here at the Voice of College Football postgame, Alabama on the SEC channel. Touchdown, Georgia. Here at the Voice of College Football family of networks, I am Zach Ramilius. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, folks. I mean, come on. You know the drill. Oh, come on, mouse touchpad. Stop being goofy. Join our call-in show at 11:30. Mark will host. We'll talk about all the day's events. What a great 11 o'clock slot, time slot. 2:30 kind of stunk, but that's okay for all of us in here because we're all Alabama fans or Alabama supporters or watchers, whatever. Join our Discord. Talk college football all the time. Sign up at patreon.com/MarkRogersTV. Add promo code BIG for $10 off a purchase of at least $100 or promo code BIG20 for $20 off a purchase of at least $300 at TicketSmarter.com. I don't know why I read that like I was a PA announcer. Oh, it's because I was in school. I think I've read all the things I need to get off my chest before we go into the game. Did you all think the Nick Saban wouldn't figure it out? He's the greatest coach of all time, folks. He'll figure it out. Alabama gets the win in Kyle Field, and there's still plenty to talk about. Two big things. I got the brick wall because I thought that'd be more entertaining to look at than my yellow wall with a painting. Two things I know about this Alabama team right now. Two good things. One, defense is pretty kick-ass. It's a pretty good defense. In this age of college football, unless you have, Georgia's, 10 first-rounders on that 2021 team, it's going to be very, very difficult to hold anyone under, say, 20 points if they have any respectable amount of if they have respectable players. And Texas A&M, for all their faults, and we'll talk about Jimbo, they've got a lot of talent, man. Nice Smith is a dude. Evan Stewart is a dude. RollTide.com is being goofy. Muhammad's a dude. They've got some guys in that receiving core. And Max Johnson's pretty solid. They're one of, I think, Texas A&M's one of the 3 or 4 teams in the country that could lose a pretty good quarterback in Connor Wegman and bring in their backup and really not miss a beat. Obviously, there's a bit of a downgrade because, one's the starter for a reason. But Max Johnson's a good quarterback, and he played okay today. There were some issues, and it was for both teams. We'll get into some of the offensive problems both teams had, but the Alabama defense today, beautiful stuff, holding them 306 yards, 239 passing. Texas A&M's not a bad team. They can move the ball as well as a lot of teams in this country. Petrino knows what he's doing offensively. So good job by the defense. And I think the thing, too, now we know Milroe's a gamer. He may not be the great quarterback. He may not be a super, he's not an NFL quarterback, but he's a gamer, and he knows how to make plays. And he still makes plenty of mistakes. He still misses. He's still some kind of really scatter shot in between 4 yards and 12 yards, which is a little disconcerting. But his deep ball is as good as anything, right? As good as anyone's right now. And he played a really good game today on Kyle Field when they needed him to, because the run game, oh my God. Jermaine Burton was a big disappointment last year. Huge disappointment for the Crimson Tide. had his first huge game. 9 catches, 197 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was excellent today, except for the personal foul, but penalties, another thing we're going to go into. Isaiah Bond, 7 catches, 96. He was great today. The rest of the Bama receiving tight end core, running backs, really didn't do anything today. They only had 5 catches combined for 28 yards. It was the Bond and Burton show, B&B. But it worked out. They got the win. That's a big win. You still have like 2 more tough road games. You go to Kentucky. I mean, Kentucky's not a bad team. They're probably going to get their butts kicked by Georgia tonight. And, we'll see how they do throughout the rest of the year. But Kentucky's a good team. And then they go to Auburn, and weird things happen in Jordan-Hare. We all know this. But it's a manageable schedule. There's a good chance that Alabama's 11-1 heading to Atlanta to play Georgia in that first weekend of December. So, what did you guys think of the game? I have some thoughts, and if any of this comes off negative, and you're in here right now, as we talk about Alabama, one, this is a good win. Going into Kyle Field against a Texas A&M team that's a top 25 to 30 team in the country with way more talent than that is good. That's a good win no matter any way you slice it. And they were really in control, it felt like, the whole game. Like, I was really – even when A&M had a lead, I was never really that nervous for Alabama. And 2, we hold Alabama to a different standard. If, say, Ole Miss went to A&M and won – but they, the run game was as crappy as it was. The penalties were a problem. We would be like, who cares? Great win, Ole Miss. But with Alabama, it's a different standard. So if I come off negative, even off of a great win, I apologize. But that's why I'm here to acknowledge up front that's an excellent win for Alabama. I'm getting rid of this stupid wall. It's killing me. That's a great win for Alabama. How do I get rid of it? I don't think I can. I just didn't want the silly my wall, that same goofy yellow wall that I always have in my place. Anyway, but what we're gonna start going into now. Well, in the chat, what do you want to talk about first? Jimbo? How atrocious he was! Awful today. Oh my God. A&M fans are pissed. Gary Danielson was losing his mind today. Well, but then again, Gary Danielson loses it on most things. If you follow me on Twitter, there's a small part of me that's going to miss Gary Danielson just sounding incredulous at anything a coach does. Because he was going nuts at Jimbo at the end there. And to be fair, probably deserved. I mean, once you got inside the 10, like, kick the field goal. Don't keep trying to play for it. Just kick it. You'll need a touchdown anyway. Just kick. Save some time. And I look at that. They needed to save some time for later because Alabama Milroe screwed up the end of the game. But we'll talk about that. But Jimbo, he was atrocious today. Do we want to talk about the penalties? Oh, my God. There were a lot of penalties. I don't know what it is. And I know people were upset about the block in the back penalty on the blocked kick touchdown. That's a point of emphasis for refs. If they see it. Sorry, Mission Impossible, no free marketing. If they see it, it's going to happen. I mean, you saw today in the Mizzou LSU game, there's been more of an emphasis on teams not clapping, like trying to imitate the snap. Even if they're not clapping to do that, they're just like, hey, you trying to get your attention, you need to be there. They're going to call it. It's a point of emphasis. So that kind of stuff's a point of emphasis now. They called it tough break, but still a blocked kick. It's pretty sick, not going to lie. Good stuff from Kentucky. I think there's a hold. But, yeah, penalties, my God. 14 penalties for 99 yards. They're lucky it didn't cost them. They're really, really lucky it didn't cost them. Because it could have, but it's just not in the cards for the old Crimson Tide today. to lose that game. Thank goodness. I mean, Texas A&M 4 penalties for 19 yards. Little shocked they didn't call a penalty on Nolan at the end of the game there when he got into a little bit of a shoving match with, I think it was Proctor. But, it is what it is. The end of the game was mishandled by, I'm going to go ahead and say Milroe. Because McClellan makes that great play, and they broke it down on the broadcast. They were like, because his knee was down when he bobbled it. But when he actually caught the ball, his knee was back up and he was able to squirm and get the first down. That's an unbelievable play. So I don't know, Milroe just kind of took the snap thinking like, oh my God, they might review it, and just like dirted it so that they could just run a play. But that was some awful clock management. But I wouldn't put that on the coaches. I mean, I guess you could, because it's the coach's job to have them ready. But that was just goofy looking. And then the run game. Alabama doesn't have a run game. They just don't. I think the offensive line isn't very good, and they were horrible in pressure. The running backs, they don't have an NFL running back. McClellan, and they're talented, but they're not NFL running backs. Roydell, they're talented, and Milroe, he took so many sacks today. But Jace McClellan, 12 carries, 45 yards with a long of 15. As always, you take the longest you carry away because that's one play. It could separate, you could, if you take away the longest play, you kind of see more of what a team was doing. 11 carries for 30 yards. You see more what they're doing on a play-to-play basis. Milroe really wasn't able to get free. And part of that is Texas A&M's got a really good front. They got a really good front seven. Their secondary stinks. I don't know if stinks is the right word, but they've played two teams with what I would call good offenses, and that's Miami and now Alabama. Actually, I don't think Alabama's that good of an offense, but they played two teams, I think, with quality offenses at the very least, top half of the country offenses, and they got smoked by both of them. But their front is pretty dang good. So I put that more on that, but the offensive line today. I mean, Cooper with 3 sacks for A&M. I thought he had 2. What did I miss one? Diggs with 2. Walter Nolan with 1. They had 6 sacks, 8 tackles for a loss. Up front for Alabama, they just got beat. And I think it was Tom Fornelli from the Cover 3 podcast said, at some point, we're just not going to be surprised when Alabama's front gets whipped. That was not this week, though, because it was still a bit surprising. Defensively for Alabama, they got 5 sacks on Max Johnson, 6 tackles for a loss. Well, and they gave up some big plays in the passing game, but like I said, A&M's got dudes, man. These guys were all 5 stars, 4 stars, highly rated recruits. Max Johnson was a very highly rated recruit going to LSU before he transferred to Texas A&M. They've got good players, and when a team's got good players, NFL, Evan Stewart might be wide receiver 1 for 2025, or like draft position. It's like him or Luther Burden at Mizzou. Moose is they're all great receivers. So they're going to make plays. And they did, but it didn't hurt them. So good job by the Alabama defense. Texas A&M run game wasn't able to do anything. Moss, only 16 carries, 49 yards. We'll take away the longest carry. 15 carries for 40 yards. It's like 2.5 yards per carry, a little bit more. Amari Daniels, 4 carries for 17 yards. Max Johnson, 12 carries, 3 yards. Just for neither team, the run game was really any sort of the run game just had no effect for either team, which is a little surprising because Bobby Petrino is a good coordinator, and I think he had a good play design today and some good stuff today. But Alabama's defense, great job. Chill with the penalties, but most of those are offense, so I'm not too worried about it. I think what 4 or 5 false starts, 6 false starts. How many fall? I know there were 2 each on 2 different guys, like a drive apart. That was crazy. I'm just unforgivable in the penalties. But going back to the run game, folks in the chat, what do you think is the problem with Alabama's run game? Because I don't think it's just one thing. There's 3 things that make a successful run game: play design, running backs, and your O-line. I think in order, it's O-line, because it doesn't matter how great your play design is. If your O-line stinks, you're not going to be able to run the ball. I think 2 is the O-line. I think if you're a halfway decent back, you can get yards if you have a good O-line. And then 3, I think, is the running back. Now, obviously, it's all important. You can't have a trash can as your running back and all of a sudden be like, oh, we got it. But what is the issue with Alabama's run game? What's up, Jackson? Welcome back. We're just talking about the Alabama run game. Great win today for the Tide, but what is going on with this running game? Atrocious again. And I don't know if some of you guys were here when we were talking about it. If Ole Miss goes into Texas A&M, wins 26-20, kind of in control the whole time, like never really felt like Alabama was going to lose that game, we'd be like, oh, cool, great win, Ole Miss. But Alabama, we're like, okay, they won, but why were there so many penalties? Why was the run game so bad? Why was some of the clock management stuff by Milroe? I don't think that's Saban. I don't think Saban or even Tommy Rees told him to dirt it on that first down after the McClellan play on 3rd and 7 to basically ice the game. Some people are mad there was a second left. Who cares? You think Texas A&M is going to get a 60-yard bomb for a win? No. No, well, they got some dudes. Like I said, they've got dudes. They could have done it. Anyway, good win for the Tide. Just everywhere. But it's not like the NFL. Going back to the running game, it's not like the NFL, where in the NFL, I just legitimately don't think running backs matter for the most part. They just kind of don't. I mean, that's why they're not getting paid. You can have a not all pro running back. The Chiefs just won a Super Bowl with Isaiah Pacheco, had Jerick McKinnon taking all the carries. You know, like the Eagles just replaced Miles Sanders with DeAndre Swift, and their running game doesn't look like it's really missing that big of a beat. And thanks for comment, Kentucky. So, but in college, I do think you legitimately need a good running back, because if you have an NFL back, even if it's like a 6th-round pick, like 2021 Mizzou had Tyler Beatty. That was not a good Missouri team. Actually, it was a really bad team. They were really lucky they got to 6-6. But Tyler Beatty was unbelievable because he was an NFL at least draftable running back. If you have a guy back there and he's playing and he goes up one-on-one against a guy that doesn't have an NFL future, there's a chance he could make plays, make a guy miss, break a tackle. So I think in college, having a running back, like an NFL caliber running back, is big. Bama doesn't have one. They just don't. I don't know what else you can really say. Their O-line's an issue, but they don't have a guy that just makes people miss, just breaks through tackles. They don't have that. And I wish they did, because I think Bama, at this point, you have to consider Bama a playoff contender. They're going to have one loss at home to Texas, which is, I watched that Texas OU game, obviously, who didn't. They're going to replay in the Big 12 title game in 2 months. And Texas is going to win by 3 touchdowns because OU got, outside of the block punt, OU got every break possible. 3 turnovers. Ewers just missing a few throws here and there. Oh, that's a hell of a catch. Who was that? Please don't tell me that was Lovett. Okay, it was Rod Thomas. Incomplete, though. They got every conceivable break and won by 4 points in a hell of a football game. They're going to lose by 3 touchdowns in Dallas next week, or in a couple months, next time they play, because I don't see anybody else in the Big 12. But anyway, going back to Texas, Texas, I think, is going to be a top 10 team all year, so that's not the end of the world. I think Bama's a playoff contender. I don't think they're a national title contender. But what I will say is how many teams around the country this year look like national title contenders. We don't have a 2020 Bama or a 2021 Georgia or a 2019 LSU, like a team that's like, okay, this is a dominant team. Maybe they have a bad week like Georgia did, or they have an opponent that's pretty close, like that 2021 Georgia team did, whereas like 2020 Alabama, just there was no peer. So if you get in, you have a chance because Washington looks really good, but they also did play a 1-touchdown game with Arizona. Texas looks pretty good, but Quinn Ewers has made some mistakes. In a rematch, see what happens. Georgia, I don't know what to make of Georgia because they look really good right now, but maybe last week was kind of the turning point where they're like, oh shit, we got to start playing. Oh, pardon my language. We got to start playing football now. Maybe that was last week, kind of like last year when they went to Mizzou and almost dropped one. But no team this year looks that great. So Alabama has a real chance to be 11-1 and a top 5-6 team heading into Atlanta. If I had to give the top 3 games that worry me the most the rest of the year, LSU's number 1 because Jaden Daniels, if that defense wasn't trash, Jaden Daniels would be a Heisman contender. He's so good. Oh my God. And I think he was playing with like damn near broken ribs for like the second half of that game today, but he's ridiculous. And so even LSU at home, I think, is a dangerous game. 2 would be Tennessee at home because that's going to be Tennessee's Super Bowl. And the third game, I think the toughest game left on Alabama's schedule is Auburn. I don't think Kentucky. I think Kentucky is one of those programs that they have a really high and stupid brick wall. I got to get rid of this. I think Kentucky has a really high floor as a program right now. I don't think they have a high ceiling. I don't think their ceiling is going to beat Bama. It just kind of is what it is. But if the issue with Alabama is they don't right now have the running game to be able to pull away from people. Now, Milroe was great today, and if Milroe keeps playing like this, they're going to have some opportunities. But in college football, if you keep playing one-possession games with teams that aren't that good, there's every opportunity to slip up. A punt doesn't go your way. An interception, a ball gets batted in the air and picked off and returned for 6. All of a sudden, it's a really, really close game. And that's the fire Alabama's going to play with for the rest of the year, unless they can figure out a run game, because they don't have one. It's horrible. And I want to give credit to Texas A&M's front. It was very good. And it is a very good front. Lots of talent, lots of 5 stars, 4 star, like number 1 overall recruits. But I think Milroe last week, Milroe was pretty good last week. And I understand having some hesitation because Mississippi State sucks. They just do. They're really bad. But man, like even going to last week, McClellan, 15 carries on 63 yards, 10 carries for 44 for Roydell. Milroe had 69 on 11, but he had 53 on 1 play. So it wasn't like on a play-to-play basis or a moment-to-moment basis. They were really dominating on the ground game. This is something that's going to need to get fixed. It just has to. If Bama's hopes this year are to win another national title or even make the playoff, run game has to be better. Against South Florida, it was pretty good, but that's South Florida. South Florida's terrible. A lot from David. Thanks for joining us again. A lot of experts were picking Texas A&M today. Bama has a QB. No, I agree. There were a lot of people picking Texas A&M, and weirdly, the line was moving. There was some chatter about a Milroe injury or like a hamstring issue, but the line was moving because Bama started off as like a 2.5 point, 3-point favorite, 3.5 point favorite, and it fell to 1 yesterday. So there, something was up. Vegas knows. I didn't pick Texas A&M to win this game, but I thought they'd give them a fight, and they did, but just not the kind of fight that Jimbo had to be better. Max Johnson, I think, played pretty well, all things considered. I think Max Johnson's a good quarterback, and they've got freaking awesome skill receiver position players. I know I've said that a few times, but man, I'm just every time. It's one of the, it's like when you play a team that has a first round pick. Yeah, thanks for coming. I'm not trying to pay attention too much to that game, but oh my god, it was a touchback. Okay, I'm not trying to pay attention too much to that. I'm more focused on this, but yeah, no, thanks for coming, Kentucky. Again, high floor, low ceiling program, but right now under Stoops, that's who Stoops is, and that's not a bad thing at Kentucky. Or at like Vanderbilt or, some of these other also-rans. Really, we're cutting to Colorado because they scored against Arizona State? Really? It's 7-7 against the Sun Devils? That's another really bad team, Arizona State. That's a rebuild and a half for old Kenny Dillingham. Anyway. I don't think picking Texas A&M was a bad choice, because this was going to be like kind of their Super Bowl. If they would have won this, no reason they can't win the West, which is a little weird to say, but there was no reason they couldn't do it. They still got games against Ole Miss and some other really bad teams, but there are some pretty decent teams. Excuse me, my goodness. And some other games against some decent teams, but I think the West is pretty wide open unless Bama has it figured out, because it kind of looks like they do offensively at the quarterback spot. Now in the running game, we can't. Ooh, nice throw, Devin. I don't know, man. I just spent 15 minutes on the run game because I started doing these shows in 2021. This is season 3. I did it after that. Mark asked me to do this. I asked him if I could do. Let me rephrase, because this is going to sound like Mark came to me. He definitely didn't do that. I'm just some nobody. Mark asked for some people who needed help. I was like, hey, I emailed him. I was like, hey, I'll help. And that was started in 2021. So I've done this 3 years. I've never seen a good Bama run game. It's been horrible. Okay, good. I need some chatter from the audience. Talked about Texas quite a bit after that game against Bama with their loss to ODU. How do you feel that game in hindsight? I touched on this a bit, but I will say, let me organize my thoughts. College football is a week-to-week sport. You're not going to get the same team every week. I think Texas, when they play again in Dallas in 2 months, wins by 3 touchdowns. Oklahoma got every break in that game. They stuffed them on 4th down inside the 2 on 4 straight plays. That's not going to happen again. They got 3 turnovers. More than likely, that's not happening again. I know Texas had the block punt, which is kind of a fluky play that goes their way. I think Texas wins by 3 touchdowns. This is like a reverse 2018, where Texas won in the Red River Shootout with against Kyler. And then they went to the Big 12 title game, and Oklahoma just kind of dominated. I think this is the reverse too, reverse of that. So I still think it's not a terrible loss. I think Texas is a top 10 team. I still think Texas is probably like a top 5 team, but we'll see moving forward. The thing with Texas that you always have to be wary of the last decade, 15 years-ish since Colt left, is they have these stupid losses. And losing to OU in this isn't a stupid loss. Congrats to Oklahoma, honestly. I thought they were kind of a paper tiger. I was like, oh, you beat Cincinnati. Like, cool. That's not the case. I think Oklahoma's a top 10 team. Good on Venables. But I think Texas is still probably a top 5 team. But what you have to be careful with Texas is they lose these stupid games that they should not lose. And this year, I couldn't tell you what game that's going to be because you never know. But they need to keep their focus. They have a bye week, which is going to help kind of reorganize everything. And I don't want to spend 2 hours breaking down Texas. But then they go to Houston. They got BYU at home. That should be a win. They go to Houston. Houston's terrible. They're the worst team in the Big 12. BYU isn't very good. They get them at home. Kansas State's not very good. They get them at home. They go to TCU, which TCU is not very good. But that's going to be, and I think this phrase is used too much, but that's literally going to be TCU's Super Bowl. They go to Iowa State. Ask Oklahoma State fans how late November trips when you have national titles, the Ames go. That's probably the scariest game left on their schedule. And then they got Texas Tech at home, who unfortunately isn't very good. I think Texas will be fine. They just don't lose one of those games. They'll go to the Big 12 title game, and they'll have a shot to knock Oklahoma out of the playoff because Oklahoma's schedule is a joke. It just is. You know, I don't blame Oklahoma for that. Like, the game against Georgia got canceled. They probably win that game right now because they're playing a lot. Or if it's like in the first few weeks because Georgia was kind of playing with their food. It doesn't look like they're doing that so much anymore. And you can knock them out of the playoff and potentially put yourself back in. You just can't lose the second game. But am I really taking Oklahoma – or not Oklahoma State, West Virginia seriously? It looks like they saved Neil Brown's job in Morgantown, but that's not a good team. Garrett Green's not a good quarterback. They're not beating Oklahoma and Texas, although they do avoid Texas. So I think they're fine. I still think the loss isn't. I think the loss today isn't as for Texas doesn't really matter for Alabama. Because if Texas does what I think Texas will do and Bama does what I think Bama can do, it won't matter. But that does lead to an interesting question about the playoff. And we still got half a season left. So there's going to be a lot of moving parts. But you're going to have Georgia or Bama. You're going to have a team from the Big Ten East, maybe two. You'll have a couple Pac-12 teams in the mix of all that. You'll have Florida State in the mix of all that, and you'll have Texas and Oklahoma in the mix of all of it. This is the first time. Yeah, thanks for comment, Kentucky. This is the first time I can remember where we didn't have a clear top echelon of 2 to 3 teams. Now, that can change in half a season. So that's been my issue with the playoff this whole time is we've never had a good playoff. We've had the playoff for almost a decade now, and I can go on one hand how many good semifinals we've had. Last year we had 2, which is awesome, and then you had like Oklahoma, Georgia was a great game. Ohio State, Clemson, the first one was a great game, and then other than that, been a lot of blowouts. Yep, David again. Wish we had an expanded play. Oh, hit the wrong one, and my touchpad's being stupid. Anyone knows how to unstick a touchpad? Let me know. Wish we had an expanded playoff this year. 7-8 teams, case for winning it all. Yeah, and I think right now, absolutely, you can make a case for Washington. You can make a case for Oregon. You can make a case for Georgia, Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State. There's some teams with losses like Alabama, who I think could be right in that mix. Notre Dame kind of feels like their season might be over because of that loss to Ohio State, which is really crappy for them. But they're with not being able to win a conference title is going to be tough for them to creep back into things. Even though that's Notre Dame's a really good team. We'll see how they do in Louisville tonight. There's a lot of good teams. There's no great teams. There's no teams like that have elevated themselves. There's no, I think take 2019 for example. Like LSU is an all-time great team. Like it's 95 Nebraska, 0-1 Miami level team. Is Carson Beck a dude? No, not on that throw. But if you look back, like that was a damn good Clemson team and a damn good Ohio State team. Those two rosters, if like you put 2019 Clemson or 2019 Ohio State into 2023, they're by far the national title favorites. So I think this is a really down year for college football in terms of like the top teams. Part of it's the transfer portal. Part of it is a lot of these teams, Georgia's new quarterback, Alabama new quarterback. A lot of these teams that have Clemson kind of fell off the face of the earth. So it's going to be an interesting year. And again, we have half a season to figure it out. So because 2019 is the only time I think we came close to having 4 awesome teams in the playoff. If Tua stays healthy and they don't lose that game to Auburn with Mac throwing, I think 2 pick sixes, if I remember right, and then they missed a field goal. I think Bama and Tua stays healthy. I think that 4-team playoff of LSU, Bama, Clemson, and Ohio State is like legitimately a amazing 4-team playoff. But we'll see. You talked about the Bama running game being bad. How can they fix it? So let's look at the Alabama schedule moving forward. I think that's where we'll start. So next week, they got Arkansas at home. Then they got Tennessee at home. Then they got a bye week. I think running back, good, bad, or indifferent, they should be able to beat Arkansas. Arkansas is a very bad team. Then they got Tennessee at home. So how you fix it is your O-line gets better. Like I said, there's 3 elements to a run game that makes it great. Scheme, O-line, running backs. In the NFL, running backs don't matter for the most part. They just don't. They're worth like a 1 win maybe, which, in a 16-game schedule can mean something. In college, they matter. And David, I know you're a Mizzou fan, so I use the example of Tyler Beatty in 2021. That was a really bad Mizzou football team. But Tyler Beatty was so awesome that they were able to overcome that because, Tyler Beatty's not an NFL running back, but he was an NFL draft pick. Not every team has an NFL draft pick at running back. And they were able to whip some ass. He was able to, make guys miss. That's not going to happen this year. They don't have the guy. Roydale had a great game against South Florida. So how you fix it is you scheme better, which I don't know if Tommy Rees can do. I wish I had the numbers in front of me. I know I did before the season about Tommy Rees's run games at Notre Dame. And you get your O-line better. It's a young O-line, but it's a big O-line. And you got 2 weeks. If you win both those home games, you got a bye week before you play LSU. Maybe some of these guys figure some things out, and that helps open up the run game a little bit. But as far as an overall fix, no idea. I don't think you really can. I don't think you can go from being a bad running team to a good running team in the span of, 6 games. But I think you can go from being a miserable running team to pretty okay. Had Kyron Williams. He did have Kyron Williams. And that's the thing, man. They just don't have that guy. When's the last time Alabama just didn't have a dude? They've always had a potential first round pick or top pick, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, like Alvin Kamara transferred from Bama because he didn't make the team. Not that he didn't make the team, but he wasn't good enough. It's been a ludicrously loaded roster for so long, and now you just don't have everybody. Really interested in this Notre Dame. Speaking of Notre Dame and Tommy Rees, really interested in them. Like, can you get up for a third straight prime time? That's just got to be so tough. Second week in a row on the road. You got another big time game next week. Yeah, Alvin Kamara started at Bama. He did. I know. It's crazy, isn't it? He started at Bama. I'm trying to pull up like a depth chart, but my stupid computer. Yeah, he was there for a couple years. In 13, 14, and 14, 15. But as a freshman, he was behind Yeldon, Derrick Henry, Kenyon Drake. And as a sophomore, he was also behind Yeldon, Derrick Henry, and Kenyon Drake. So, yeah, no, Alvin Kamara was ridiculous. And then he went to Tennessee and he became a great running back. But Alabama has always had dudes, and they just don't have a dude. That happens. I'm sure recruiting wise they'll find one. Oh, nice play at Louisville. Jeff Brom's a really good coach. He just is, man. He's just a really, really good football coach. When you play them, he's just going to have some kind of scheme, especially in big games. He's just going to scheme something up that's going to be a pain in the ass. So I think we were talking about the playoff. I think there's two teams in the country that have a chance to elevate themselves above the others, and that's Michigan and Georgia. I think those are the two teams that can elevate. I don't think anybody else can elevate to be like an all-time great team or like a clear front runner. But we'll see moving forward. I like NBC's production value for what it's worth. But Alabama wins. Going into Kyle, I said it at the start of the show, going into Kyle Field and getting a win where you kind of felt in control the whole time. It's nothing to sneeze at. It's a tough place to play. How many times they say 108,000 people on their feet here in Kyle Field getting ready for this third down. Good Lord. Nice catch. But because we judge Bama to a different standard, there's issues. The run game, really bad today. The defense, really good. Penalties, really bad. Clock management at times, pretty mediocre. The defense, so like I said at the start of the show, there's two things I know about Alabama. One, good things. They've got a defense. Texas A&M has dudes up and down that roster. We can make fun of Jimbo for everything, and God willing, I will, because I can't stand Jimbo Fisher. But he's been able to recruit, and they've got guys, Smith, Stewart, Moose, like those are dudes. They're going to make plays, and Max Johnson's a good enough quarterback. At the start of the show, I said Connor Wegman is a really talented quarterback. He goes down, and Texas A&M is able to replace him with a quarterback who's not as good, but it's pretty close. Like Max Johnson would be a starter on a handful, probably half the SEC teams. Just thinking off the top of my head, he'd probably be the starter at Vandy, Mississippi State. Probably be the starter at he'd be the starter at Auburn. He wouldn't be the starter. He wouldn't be the starter at like Mizzou, South Carolina. I think he'd be the starter at Bama, to be honest. He wasn't the starter at Texas A&M. He's a good quarterback, and they were able to make some plays. And that front seven for Alabama or Texas A&M is really good. It's really good, and it gets after the passer, which is why they had 6 sacks today. That and Milroe. I think it was College Football Nerds pointed out. Milroe had a really tough time recognizing blitzes. His pre-snap reads were just terrible. And then I think they even pointed out, it might have been them or it might have been, I forget who it was, and I apologize. If it was College Football Nerds, congrats to you. I like your guys' podcast, even though you talk crap on my team today. A lot of the post-snap read, or pre-snap, a lot of the pre-snap reads that Milroe was getting, when to key or hot route or, change to run or something, were coming from the sideline. It wasn't coming from him anymore. He was just coming from the sideline. And that's when Bama started to move the ball a little bit better. And he made some throws today. That touchdown to Bondi threw in the corner of the end zone. Whew. Whew. And of course, that was like right after he missed generally what we would consider an easy throw, but he was good today, man. Jalen, good for Jalen Milroe. But that's the other thing I know. Bama's got a gamer at QB. He's not great. No one needs to pretend Jalen Milroe is all of a sudden an NFL prospect or better than what he is. He's a good college quarterback. And for Alabama, with that defense, that might be enough this year to make this into a successful season. I think a successful season for Bama would be make the playoff, would be win the SEC, and see how things kind of sort themselves out. And I think Bama can win the SEC. Free play for Georgia. Oh my God. Okay, maybe not. Georgia sooner or later was going to start putting it all together. They're one of the two teams I think that can pull away from the rest of the pack. I think them and Michigan can. And Georgia can do it with more talent. So, yeah, it was offsides. All right, 2nd and goal for Louisville. Play action. Oh, it was there, Jack. It was there. Georgia looks to be awake. Yeah, when they went to Mizzou last year and really struggled, like people forget that. Let me pull it up because I want to give the exact numbers. 2022 Georgia. I want to give the exact scores. Just so I can come on, stupid Wikipedia. But Georgia kind of did this last year. They played Oregon. They beat the crap out of them. Okay. Never mind. No, they didn't. I lied. They did it in the middle of the year. They played with their food a little bit against Kent State. Like Sean Lewis is a hell of a coach offensively, and you're seeing what he's doing at Colorado. They went to Mizzou and only won by 4, but then they flipped around. They went into Auburn, won 42-10. They played Vanderbilt 52-0. Florida 42-20. Tennessee, they dominate. They went up 21-0 and took their foot off the gas. Mississippi State 45-19. They again just beat the crap out of Kentucky. Georgia Tech, they played with their food for about a half. Georgia has a tendency sometimes to play with their food for a half. Touchdown Louisville, but I think they've woken up. I think they went. Oh, and I think Carson Beck's a pretty good quarterback. I know it is, in my opinion, when a competition goes long in camp. You saw this with Ohio State too. I think when a competition goes long, you really should just play the younger guy, because if the older guy's not separating himself with the things he should be good at, which is knowing the system, not turning the ball over, being more composed. If he's not doing that, just play the kid, because if neither quarterback's going to be composed, play the guy that's more talented. And I know people thought Georgia should do that with Stockton or Vandergrift. They didn't do that. So Ohio State, the same thing, like just play Devin Brown. But Kyle McCord looked okay today in the second half against Maryland. But then again, it is Maryland, whose whole bit seems to be being 4-0 and then losing by 4 touchdowns on the road. I think America is rooting for Louisville right now, hilariously. All righty. I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you all for being here tonight. Alabama wins. We'll be back next week at like 2:30. Again, I'm sorry I wasn't here last week. My computer just kind of crapped out on me. Not Mark's fault. It's all my fault. I should have checked my computer at some point during the day. I just didn't. What was I doing last week that I was out, that I wasn't home? I just didn't check it. I didn't check to make sure the stream was working. My camera was being terrible, and I apologize. But Alabama wins. We'll be back next week. Alabama wins 26-20 over Texas A&M. Like the video, subscribe to our channels, and subscribe to all our networks of channels, the Voice of College Football. Just a bunch of college football dorks that love to – I just spit a little bit, gross. That love talking the sport, love talking it with you. And speaking of loving to talk about it, join our Discord. Talk college football all the time. Sign up at patreon.com/MarkRogersTV. And don't forget to join our Voice of College Football call-in show at 11:30. Our late night slate, it's 11:30 Eastern time. Our late night slate, not that great tonight, so go ahead, hop in there, listen. You are listening live to, of course, Alabama Postgame, live at the Voice of College Football. I am Zach Remilius, and lastly, promo code BIG. There's a lot of teams out there. Your season's not over. You have one loss. Your season's not over yet. So go to these games, support your team, and use promo code BIG for $10 off a purchase of at least $100 or more, or promo code BIG20 for $20, which is what the Big Ten's about to be, for $20 off a purchase of at least $300 or more at ticketsmarter.com. Get your tickets. Go support your team. There's nothing quite like the on-campus experience of college football. I actually tweeted that like before I came live. I know I'm about to hop off, but like, I love this sport, obviously. The Baba O'Reilly at Sanford Stadium before like a big night game kickoff. Goosebumps, man. It's so cool. But congrats to Alabama on another big win. We really could be staring at the Tide being 11-1 come December. And then all of a sudden, are they going to make the playoff? We'll see. We'll be back next week for their game against Arkansas. It's a game they should win. But KJ Jefferson's a tank at quarterback, and that's a good and they're going to be ready. So we'll catch you here next week. Thanks for being here tonight. Have a great rest of your night. Enjoy this night slate, and enjoy your NFL Sunday if you choose to partake. And I will see you all next week.